Milo, is that you?
There, I think I got it. Bruce?
Lionel?
Bruce?
Lionel?
Have you seen Dave?
Dave's not here, man.
He's supposed to be here.
Is he?
Uncle Dave.
Oh, God, man. Sorry, I just woke up from a long winter slumber. Bruce, it's great to hear your voice, sir.
Well, some would say that.
I think so.
Dave, move your microphone away from your mouth a little bit there and down a tad from your nose, and that would be great.
Am I talking too much again?
No, you got the microphone shoved in your left nostril.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
It's technical.
Thank you, guys. Yes, technical speak. Yes.
Yeah, and I know exactly where you were. I know exactly. You know where Dave was, Bruce? You know what I just did, Bruce? You know what I just...
No, I have no idea.
You know what I just did about... let me see. I'm going to look on the official AML phone here. Let's see. At 8:04 p.m., I got a message that said there's a new book on the Model Railroader site, the Combach site, called Guide to Signals and Interlockings.
Oh, it's there now, is it? Or is it pre-order?
I don't know. They took my money anyways. I bought 2 copies.
It's pre-ordered, and literally just in the last 2 hours, it popped up on the site. I checked this morning, knowing it was coming at some point, and it popped up a couple hours ago. And I have to. This is pretty surreal. I'm thrilled, so thrilled at how the cover came out. It's really exciting.
Dave?
Yes.
Bruce. The modeler, simply known as Kelly, is constantly berating me that he wants me to make you a super fan, and I have to explain to him that A, you're basically crew now, and B, he's just like, ignoring Hard Part, and who's been here for years, and for some reason or other he thinks you should be a super fan, and C, Bruce and I were having a conversation, so if you could just wait till we take a breath. So anyways, Bruce.
Oh, were we talking? I'm sorry.
Yeah, we were. I was getting all excited to tell you that I went on the Combach site, and I got a text from Uncle Dave around about 45 minutes ago, and I bought my 2 copies. I bought my first 2 copies of hang on, let me see what it's called. It's really interesting. It's called Guide to Signals and Interlockings, authored by one Uncle Dave Abeles. Only it just says Dave Abeles.
It does say Dave Abeles. That's a great cover.
It's the first book he's ever written, and I know I must be one of the first people to ever purchase it. And I purchased 2 just because I'm convinced that the first 3,500 copies will sell out in record time. Combach does not realize what they've gotten themselves into.
Well, I'm very flattered. Thank you very much, and thank you, Bruce. Yeah, I'm. This whole thing, it just became very real in the last 2 hours. This is something else.
Bruce, did you hear me say, Dave, what do you think?
We're rolling the tape back. No.
This is going to be, I'm telling you right now, buddy.
This is going to be a beauty.
Yeah, this is, we are in for a long night here. We're going to have to use all of our 6 years of experience and expertise to try to get through this because
Dave is giddy as a schoolgirl. That's his problem.
What's that?
He's as giddy as a schoolgirl.
He is as giddy as a schoolgirl because his new book just was released in the last couple of hours.
And I can see how that could happen.
I would be very giddy. I would be very, very giddy. Did
you feel the same way when your book came out?
I was excited when my first magazine came out, and I actually ran down I tracked the UPS guy down and said, can I have my magazine, please? And so, yes, I can. So, Dave.
Oh, I get to fill the silence now? Is that?
So
yes,
Dave,
that's your cue.
So
you you've been addressed. That's your
yeah,
cue.
exactly. So Dave, this looks I'm pretty this is pretty exciting. I'm hoping to get a free copy as well, but I wanted to be somebody that bought some. So I bought one. I bought 2 copies sent to my house in Florida. One I'm going to send to you to get signed. The other one I'm going to have to, I feel like I'm going to have a copy of Signals and Interlockings handy wherever I am. So I might need 3 or 4 copies before I'm done.
Well, thank you, sir.
So are you excited?
Oh my gosh, yes. And that's saying something.
You know what? Before we go on any further, why don't we get our guest tonight is none other than Rich Wisniewski. He's not that interesting. So we got a stand-in. We got Jack Trabachino to come in because when we just thought about it, we thought, nah, Rich just isn't that. That's not true. Rich is an interesting guy.
I can completely agree. Yes,
and
I could
go ahead.
Oh no, I don't want to step on toes. You were talking. Go ahead.
No, I was just cutting you off that time.
Oh, without Rich, and especially without Jack Trabachino, who's in the green room as we speak here. I keep telling him, and I think it's nothing I'm doing here would be possible without him. This is this is the guy that makes the OC something besides just a model railroad in a basement someplace. The operational side of things, which is what's made it so special to me and why it's growing like it is, I think, is because of what Jack has been able to build onto, infrastructure that I put together based on a plan that he and I did together. So he's really been, well, we'll get into it as the night goes on. I'll let him tell that part of the story, but an indispensable character, both him and Rich. Without them, this wouldn't be what it is.
I actually have a question for him as soon as let's get him in here before we go on, because we've already chewed up several minutes. Let me see. We've already chewed up 7 minutes. We don't want to waste. We don't want to. Although we are extremely interesting, let's get Jack in here. And seeing as how he's your buddy, why don't you go down the hall there and get him into the studio.
All right, here we go. All right, Jack, let's walk in, bud. Here we go.
Bruce, Dave's very light on his feet.
He is. He must have his fuzzy slippers on.
Yeah. Dave's got his fuzzy.
He's got his bunny slippers on.
Yeah, his fuzzy bunny slippers. Jack?
Well, Jack? I guess I'm in the green. I'm out of the green room now.
You are
running down the hall. Thunk, thunk, thunk.
Yeah.
Welcome to the studio.
Thank you, Dave.
So, Jack, are you as excited about the book as we are?
Of course I am.
How many copies have you bought?
Well, none yet.
I
just came out.
Can't be that excited.
Jump on it. I can't get it because the website crashed from demand.
That's what I heard. Yeah, I must have got in just before the website crashed.
I think people are buying the whole run and they're going to sell them on eBay at a markup.
Jeez.
That's what was my thought. I was going to buy a gross, but then I thought, well, how many's in a gross? Anybody?
Good question. I would guess 1,000, but I don't know.
What's that, a gross?
Yeah.
12 dozen.
12, yeah, 144, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. There we go. See, I learned something right away.
But yeah, seriously, I actually am really excited about the book because, there's a lot of stuff in there that Dave has taken on technologically, and obviously sought counsel. But there's definitely a vision and a passion and a determination there to create to create and fulfill a very specific vision. That it's a little bit different than how I approach trains and modeling. I get down to a certain level of detail, and stop, and I'm ready to operate. But I think Dave really, pursued it, to a whole new level. And that's what's evident in that book, and being willing to share everything he learned from that. It's probably too serious for this, but, but that's what's really exciting about seeing that book come together is it's such a labor. from the very beginning when the layout was plywood, to have that vision in your head and follow through with it and do all that work. And then not just be satisfied for yourself when you have it, but find a way to share it. Find a way to describe it and share it and bring other people into it.
So were you involved in the book at all? Did he? I'm sure he must have talked to you about it. Are you?
Yes, I mean, I reviewed some drafts. I contributed a few pictures. In terms of, being part of the sort of consultancy, I guess, that figured out how things would be laid out, what aspects we would display in specific situations. I'm a part of it, but I think the real heavy lift of the effort obviously was is all Dave.
Well, yeah, for sure. But he seems to have a lot of guys that enjoy like I had a chance to do some remote operating there a week or so ago, and I mean, everybody just seems to have a lot of fun being part of it. So I'm assuming that everybody kind of had fun being part of the evolution of the book too, probably.
Yeah, of course. And, where I really see the book beginning is I think one of the most interesting challenges in that signal system isn't even necessarily the stuff in the middle of the railroad. It's, we sort of had to come up with a vocabulary of how to describe what Dave and I ended up referring to, as modeled territory and, basically the live signal territory and the areas that were, beyond the east to Selkirk, west to Buffalo type stuff. How do you transition out of that prototype signal and into, the part of the railroad where you're, managing, kind of the behind the scenes staging. We had some very interesting debates with people who do signals, what it meant that we were, the fact that we're coming off of a main line and we want a mainline signal aspect and a mainline speed. To exit into what are signals, rules-oriented member of the team saw as a piece of controlled track. And defining, I think, that boundary between the area we were signaling and the area we were just kind of, when the trains sort of, turned back into pumpkins, so to speak, they went back to just being plastic trains. How do we manage that transition? And what implications did it have for how we modeled the signal system? I actually think that was one of the most, detailed, almost philosophical parts of the whole project.
I have a really good point about that, but I don't think I should bring it up yet because it's not for this part of the discussion. So I think for what we got to do is we got to break this down as simply as possible, because first we got to introduce everybody. So we got Uncle Dave. First, I'm going to start with Bruce the mailboy. He's been here the longest. And then we got Uncle Dave Abeles, who is Kelly has a bromance going with you, Dave.
It's funny because I don't think I've ever spoken to him in real time.
Yeah,
but I do appreciate it. Thank you, Bruce. That's great.
Yeah, he's the modeler, simply known as Kelly. He doesn't really respond to Bruce anymore; just pretty much only responds to Kelly. And
thank you, Kelly.
Yeah, and if you can avoid a real-time discussion with him, I think you'd be far, far ahead.
Yes.
Like I wouldn't pursue that with any.
All right.
All right. Don't go over your way navigating direct to it.
Yeah.
Roger that. Thank you.
And the reason we're doing this episode tonight is because we're going to talk to anybody who's listened to you on the podcast has heard you mention many, many times. The gentleman that was just speaking is Jack Trabachino, which is, I'm assuming, what's the heritage of your last name, Jack?
It is Sicilian.
Okay. It's a cool name. It's a really cool name. Yeah. I mean, of all the times Dave has said it, I never really got it until I kind of met you. And then I got, Trabachino. It's kind of the way it sounds, kind of the way it's spelled. Trabachino.
Yep, rolls right off the tongue. I think it means something to do with work, either little work or no work.
That's ironic.
Trabahar is the root, the word root for work, at least in,
Right.
I know that in Spanish. I don't know what the Chino part necessarily is. I should look that up.
And now that we have your correct spelling,
It might be hard worker. I don't know, but that's.
Yeah. And now that we have your correct spelling, what's your Visa number, your Visa card number? Not that we
4147.
Yeah.
All Visa starts with 4147.
Mine doesn't. Mine starts with 4900. Well, that's the one I used to buy. Hey, Dave, I'm going to throw this in as much as I can. That's the one I used to purchase my new book from Combox. I haven't bought anything from I don't think I've actually bought anything from Combox since the mid-90s. Like, this is the first time in 26 years I've actually purchased anything from it might be like 30, probably about 20, somewhere between 25 and 30 years. This is the first time since I bought anything from Combox.
Wow.
Yeah.
You shoplifted the other stuff?
No, I had.
Well, it's one or the other, right?
Yeah. Well, no, actually, I had some. I was with Combox for a while. I actually I got most of my stuff for free, Dave. So there you go.
Oh, there you go. Not me yet.
Yeah. So, anyways, Jack, we're gonna invest. We're gonna find out all about you. So, how did you two guys meet, Jack?
Oh, okay, that's for me.
Yeah.
Well, 5th grade.
Yeah, he catches on quick.
Yeah, doesn't he though? Eh?
Yep, I hear my name.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, 5th grade. We had one run-in encounter before that. Because Dave and I went to separate elementary schools up through 4th grade, and I believe at one point our combined gifted and talented groups from the school that was up on the mountain in Long Valley and the school that was down in the valley in Long Valley took a joint trip to the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia. And at some point, the mountain kids and the valley kids got into an argument, and it turned into who knows more about trains, because we discovered there were 2 train people on the bus, a mountain train person and a valley train person.
That's right.
That didn't go especially well. We each had defenders on our team of who knew more about trains, and that was sort of our first running across of one another. But the following year, we ended up in the same 5th grade homeroom, and it was very early in the year. And what I remember is standing, by the door, waiting to be dismissed to go to the buses, and someone asking me what I was going to do all weekend, and just responding that I was going to go home and run my trains all weekend. And I remember Dave being at the door next to me and turning around and saying, "Oh my God, you like trains too." And at that point, I think I recognized his face from the bus. Something came back to me, and I remembered saying, "Oh, you're the person from the bus."
So who was Valley and who was Mountain?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm Mountain.
Okay.
Well,
there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm clearly in the valley. It's true.
And what was this? Was this mountain and valley? Was it near any place, any town that we might recognize the name of?
Well, Long Valley. It's on the C&J Highbridge branch. So if you know anything about that.
No, I don't. No, Jack, I don't.
I'm sure.
All right. So what's the biggest town you know in New Jersey?
Me?
Yeah.
I don't know. Newark. I don't know
Okay. You don't know anything about New Jersey.
Well, yeah, I know as much about New Jersey as I do about, Oklahoma. I know it's New Jersey. I know it's the home. It was the home of Carson's publications for years and years. I know there's some grimy bits. There's some country scenic bits. It's New Jersey. It's Jersey.
Yeah, we were more in the country scenic part, I would say, at the time.
Right.
A lot of farmland. A lot more subdivisions now, but a lot of farmland back then. And, as far as, close by railroad, things to really go explore our interests with, there wasn't really much there. The one branch through town was torn up in the early '80s, and the nearest thing to us, that we knew about was probably the Lehigh line, ex Lehigh Valley,
Time
for
out.
freight,
Time out, Jack.
and
Time out.
NJ Transit for passenger.
Yeah, time out for a minute. Dave,
Yes,
what town is this?
Long Valley,
There's
Valley, New Jersey.
Okay, where is it near? Like, there's actually a town called Long Valley? This is the first
Town
time
called Long Valley. This is we talked about this. You gotta review that podcast there, sir.
Norristown,
I guess-
Chester.
Yeah, between Chester and Clinton. It's you're talking 45 miles straight west of New York City.
Okay.
So the town of Chester is sort of that would be the commercial center closest to Long Valley, to the east. And if you went north from Long Valley over the mountain, which is up where Jack was from, where he grew up, you get to Hackettstown, right?
Right. So you're 45 minutes west of New York City.
Correct. And about 45 miles, because it's all interstate highway to go straight east.
Across 76 or 80?
78.
Yeah, 78 is down by me, and
Okay.
and 80 up by Hackettstown. So there's two primary east-west routes out of New York. One is 78 and one is 80. They both cross New Jersey.
So I'll just say right here is where you actually do need Rich Wisniewski to explain where this is and what it's between and what highways you would use to most quickly get to it.
He does love his roads.
He would have had this answered succinctly and accurately like 3 minutes ago.
Bruce, did you bring any snacks?
No, but I'm working on getting some brought in.
Yeah. I think we're in for a long night here, buddy.
I better double up on the extra large sizes then?
Yeah.
And you won't want to have a beer come with your snack. You got to wash it down with something.
Yeah. So far, I think I'm I'm passing the beer and I'm headed right into the hard stuff. Okay. So we're 45 minutes west of New York City. And, okay, so you guys, one guy lives on a hill, one guy lives in a valley, it's grade 5, and you guys find each other. Is that pretty much where we're at this point?
Yeah.
Okay. And so,
I mean, what I remember too is just walking down the hall at that, that day, we walked the whole rest of the way out to the buses together and, traded stories, just by way of introduction. And, the rest was history after that. So,
and are either of you guys connected to the mob?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
Nice, Dave. That was not coordinated.
Because I also know that about New Jersey.
Yeah,
No, this is too far. Well, they went to Sussex County.
Okay. All right. So you guys, so Jack, so then, when you guys started hanging out, were you guys kind of on the same plane, kind of on the same radio frequency? Like, was it kind of like love at first sight? And you guys just started hanging out and doing train stuff?
Well, I think we each introduced each other to, new possibilities. I think, what I know Dave always says is, my room was just filled with electric trains. I had it was a small, relatively small bedroom, and my mom is handy, and my mom built me like a loft, bunk bed style thing, so that I would have enough space in my room to have a small Lionel train set at the bottom. And, it was just a circular track, but it had some switches. It had some industries. I was running trains and assigning cars even then, and doing switching and stuff like that. So, I had a shelves in my room that had all my other trains that wouldn't fit on my little set were stored on a shelf. And it wasn't a lot, but to kids our age, it looked like a lot.
Sure. So both you guys are lifers then.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, what I remember, Dave coming over, it was a real revelation that someone could like live surrounded by trains the way I did.
It blew my mind. It blew my mind.
Because Dave's Dave had, how would I describe,
You can be honest.
I'm trying to be. Your parents were a little more stern about that stuff. There was almost like a like a Puritan work ethic type thing where, you were not allowed to be surrounded by something that gave you that much joy.
That's
Hey,
a fact.
this is turning out way better than I thought. We're only 25 minutes in, and Bruce, we're learning out a whole bunch of stuff. We're learning out things that I didn't really even know. This is gonna. I wonder how Kelly's gonna feel after this.
No, I mean, look, Jack, it blew my doors off. I grew up, again, dad was Jewish, mom was Catholic, but mom was a pretty serious Catholic, and so church was, religiously in all aspects of that term, every week without fail, vacation, not vacation, home, not home, snow, rain, doesn't matter. We're going to church, and I didn't hate church, but it never really resonated with me the way that it did with her, and I didn't understand why that was. And a brother and a sister that had different interests. My brother loved farm equipment. I loved trains, but we had to share that space. And my brother and I lived in the same bedroom for years and years, so there wasn't room for a layout even with a bunk. So my little 4x8 sheet of plywood was in the basement with the coal bin. So I had actual coal dust on my layout, and nothing ever ran well. It was dingy and dusty, and I had asthma, and it was a mess. And meeting Jack, all of a sudden I realized like it was love at first sight. I mean, to use that term, Lionel, you brought it up, and I don't disagree at all. Jack is my first best friend. I never met anybody that I learned so much from in my whole life, and that continues to today. It's a unbelievable stroke of luck for me, the way that it fell together.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I was going to just describe, I remember that layout in the basement, and up till that point, I had only had Lionel trains, and HO trains back then were, either you had a nice brass model, or something, or you had an Athearn engine, which we didn't discover till later, or you just had some, cheap, whiny, lifelike toy that, you went out and bought at KB Hobbies or something, or whatever. So what I remember about Dave's HO layout, it was just a 4x8 sheet with a loop of track and just covered in coal dust with, these cheap, flimsy Bachmann models. Although you did have that Santa Fe GP9, that was an Athearn. That was the nicest engine.
We got that secondhand at one of the church sales in Chester, and that engine I couldn't figure out. Again, being from a non-trained family, my dad, school teacher. Another thing we had in common is that it's sister high schools outside of where we lived. Jack's dad was an English teacher, and my dad was a social studies teacher. So both of our parents were teachers in the same school district, the Roxbury-Randolph district, which is, we can get back into that later. But the Santa Fe engine had these beautiful metal handrails that didn't bend. And it had these big lead round things inside that you could see if you looked up through the bottom. And boy, the thing could pull the paint off the walls. We just thought it was the greatest. All the wheels were driven. It didn't stall. And it was our best engine. And I didn't know who made it. I didn't know anything about it. Horn hook couplers, cheap Bachmann cars and lifelike cars. I didn't know anything about kit building or Blue Box or Athearn. I just knew the trains that I had because that's how little I knew about the hobby at that point. And Jack was the one that changed the way I saw almost everything from day one. Because he had these big Lionel trains, and I'd never seen a home layout of Lionel trains. I'd been to this place in Madison, New Jersey, where the fella had a large basement, and he would put on shows once a year or twice a year for 20 people. You'd charge a couple dollars, and people would bring their kids to watch his Lionel layout run around in circles. He had night lighting and a couple different loops. But then going to Jack's house for the first time, his parents went to bed before we did, which never happened in my house, ever. And then we ran trains as late as we felt like it until his sister came in and yelled at us for making too much noise at like 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, and it was cool back then. You'd run trains, and it would interfere with the TV. It would screw up the TV picture.
So, Bruce?
Yes?
I just want to apologize to you. in advance, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
So, anyways, I'm sorry for what's about to happen. Jack, when you first saw Dave's oval of track covered in coal dust and kind of dingy and grimy, did you kind of think to yourself, "Man, this layout's from the other side of the tracks"?
No, not at all. And I'll tell you why.
No, I thought that was funny. Apparently, Jack missed that one, but I thought that was funny.
I mean, yeah, but the truth is,
I got a moderate guffaw out of it.
Yeah, moderate. It was at least a moderate guffaw. Come on.
Well, Lionel track has 3 rails, so who am I to laugh at anybody?
Except it has the name of Lionel on the side of the equipment, so.
It's so true. My home layout, and my interests were very much, defined by my father's interests. So he grew up in Elizabeth on West Grand Street. And at the time he was, if you don't know or haven't seen photos of this, you should seek them out. This was where the 4-track Jersey Central main line, went under the 4-track Pennsy main line. And you had the Elizabeth station on the Pennsylvania Railroad up above on a bridge, and the clock tower of the CNJ station down below. My dad grew up maybe a mile or so west of that. He saw everything. When he was my son's age, he was seeing, B&O Varnish. He was seeing Trainmasters, F3s, Baldwins, Steam, anything Reading, everything that ran through there.
So awesome.
He laid eyes on, which was, turned out not to just be formative for him, but formative for me. So his modeling interests, such as they are, were sort of were born from that.
So was your dad a model railroader, or
not? Not so much. I mean, he has a lot of interest in models of the equipment that he used to see. I'll definitely say that he likes to collect things. When he's obviously sentimental when he sees a model that reminds him of those years. Just like we are when we see, just like I get sentimental, go down to Dave's layout and see the locomotives he has, and we put a train together. That's an emotional experience.
Yeah, well, I think that's what this hobby's all about, though. All of the people involved in the hobby are all different levels of involvement. So it's not that your dad isn't a model railroader; it's just that what he did or how he enjoyed trains and the hobby is different from other people. It's just this, everybody makes up the hobby. We all make up the hobby.
Correct. It refracts through him in a different way. So, for me, I inherited most of his childhood Lionel collection. Actually, when I was 8, there used to be a model train shop in Alamucci, which was our main model train shop. And I really wanted to earn the money to buy a diesel. My big thing, back at that young age, was I recognized that Lionel steam engines did not have functioning couplers on the front end. And I wanted a diesel so that I could have something that had functioning couplers on 2 ends. And, my way of going about that was my parents took me to this train shop. And this very kind owner of this proprietor of this train shop let me sit in the back room with him while he took apart my dad's post-war steam engines, cleaned the parts, and put them all back together and wired them back up and got them working again. So that was formative. But he also let me patrol the store, and the store had a little layout in it. And my job as an 8-year-old was, on Saturday mornings when it was busy, was to make sure all the other kids who were in there kept their hands off of it.
Really? So you would hang out in this store. Do you remember the name of the store at all?
Oh man, I would have to look that up. I don't. It was something simple. It was like all these model train shop. I was like, but that I remember his face. I remember his affect when my parents drove me down there, and he's looking up and he's kind of fiddling with something in his hands, and he says, "Well, child labor laws and stuff." But he was kind enough to let me sit with him and let me be in his store and answer my questions. And I wish I could find that guy. I mean, it's that was a formative experience. But for me, I guess back to the point of what did I think when I saw Dave's layout? Well, I remember Dave had a I think it was a lifelike Union Pacific SD40.
It was Bachman. It was a Bachman.
Bachman, yeah.
With the flashing light on the roof. Yeah.
Yes. It had a flashing beacon on the roof, and I was envious of that engine. because that was kind of the first time I saw an HO. Well, wow, look at the level of detail on this thing. This isn't it's not up to today's standards by any means, but just the scale elements of it were very compelling to me. And the fact that it was something I could open one of the train magazines I got in the mail and see a Union Pacific SD40 or a picture of a Santa Fe engine. These were road names that were contemporary to me, even as a young kid. So, that kind of actually sparked some interest in me. And I actually went out and I tell my kids all the time, when I was 10, my daughter's 12. And by the time I was her age, I was hauling my lawnmower up the street to 3 different places to earn money to buy trains. And one of the things I went out and bought, this was like heretical to my dad, it was blasphemous, was I bought a Burlington Northern GP38, which was just like...
And you survived?
Yes, I lived to tell the tale.
Wow.
Well, and the crazy part is this lawnmower that he was hauling up the street is uphill to the lawns that he was mowing, and then it was uphill back to his
It was a riding mower. I rode it up the street.
so while,
either way, I worked my ass off.
Well,
I remember that. And my dad loved you for it. My dad loved cutting grass, and so Jack and my dad, at first sight, Jack was good at cutting grass, and my dad thought that was great. So then every time Jack came over, my dad would make both of us cut grass before we could touch the trains for like 2 hours.
Yeah.
So basically, it sounds like at Jack's house, Mom's building all kinds of stuff so Jack can just have fun. And then you'd go down to Dave's house and he'd have to shovel coal for 2 hours.
Yeah, it sounds like slave labor.
I know.
Fun and games up at Jack's place.
Yeah, you should talk to my kids. I think I'm turning into my dad, you guys. I don't know.
Yeah. I might have
you
to
kids get out there and shovel that driveway, buddy.
But getting that Burlington Northern GP38 and matching it up with Dave's Union Pacific SD40, then that was a change for me. That was huge. I was buying something at a different scale and a different road name from a different era. So Dave, it sparked a whole kind of experiment for me in HO, because that was what we had in common. And I, again, it was a lifelike engine. So you'd put it on the tracks and it would, if you were lucky, it made it around once.
Right. So you bought this engine to run on Dave's layout, or you had by this time installed a circle of HO track in your own room?
No, I bought that so that I would have something to go to Dave's place to work
okay, with. All right, but there would only barely go, but that's because the track was covered in coal dust. And I was
probably that it's it was just it would be $20 engine.
I was almost convinced you were going to tell me your mom knocked down one wall in your bedroom and then expanded your whole bedroom and built.
Well, how did you know that? What, did Dave tell you that? That came later. in life.
Speaking of later, we're really only up to the age of 10 or 11, and while Dave had a 37-part series on, well, I see that happening now. It's the Jack Trabachino. It's Trabachino. It's 3 syllables, really, is what you're talking about there.
Sounds like 4 to me. I don't know.
It sounds more. Yeah, I'm thinking.
Randall's not big on the counting.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah. I'm pretty proud of myself that I identified 3 syllables there. So let's not cloud the issue.
Yeah, 3 out of 4 ain't bad. Right?
Yeah, exactly. So while we're enjoying this, could we possibly move ahead to the high school years? So you guys, how long were you guys hanging out doing? So you guys are now having a ball, being pals and loving trains. So did you guys carry this on through high school, or did you guys interest start to wane, or?
Well, for me, yeah, I think by the time I got to 10th grade, I was ready for a change. I think from
cutting grass and shoveling coal.
Well, cutting grass was fine, but when it came to a room full of trains, I had that for I could look at my room and it was the same, as a 16-year-old, a 17-year-old as it was when I was, a 12-year-old. So, I did and I've done this in, a couple times, it was just for me personally. I had to sort of just withdraw from it a little bit. Dave, Dave was in the marching band right from the get go. So, in high school, he had instantly, because he's a very affable person. He's no different now than he was then. He can make friends with anybody. He can, talk a great game.
That's there. Well said.
But it's not just talking a great game. It is a great, a great game. But Dave makes a great impression on everybody he meets. So Dave instantly formed bonds with people who had cars. And for me, I was not in the band at that time, and I was.
So it sounds more like what you're trying to say. Dave was with the cool kids.
No, I don't know if I go that far.
Okay.
They're the band.
Basically, he ditched you and he moved on to his new friend.
No.
Oh, okay.
No, it was. I don't see it that way at all. I mean, Dave has made. I think. Boy, you're going to get me all teary eyed. I think anytime Dave and I have started to go off in kind of different parallel directions. Think of it as like the Santa Fe main line out in Arizona or something, or wherever it is, where they have one main line is like a mile and a half away from the other. But it still runs as a railroad, right? So it's just you're off in the distance a little bit, and Dave is always the one who's like reels it back in. Make sure that we don't lose touch. Make sure that we stay true to sort of to the foundations of our friendship. So so those early years of high school were a tough time, because just we were in different places socially. I had a much tougher we both had tough experiences in middle school, but we were separated actually after 5th grade. We were kept apart, which was tough.
We were kept apart. That was the first time I realized that institutions can do things that almost feel cruel. Growing up, it was, my parents were big volunteers. They were very much involved in stuff like the Peace Corps and local societies. And my dad was a coach. Jack's dad was a coach. But our 5th grade teacher, the one that was in charge of that homeroom that we met in, saw that we were so close and we completely distracted by each other and we were around each other. And so for our academic success, she made sure that for 4 years, we would never be in the same classes again.
Yeah, we were blackballed. But it was hard because I think, like I just said about Dave, he can function in any environment successfully, and I have this sort of personality. Like I keep a few very close friends, and it takes a long time to evolve and build a friendship. And, I don't always just, jump into every situation. So, being isolated, being apart from Dave was I think probably, correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, but, I think much more isolating for me in those years leading up to high school than it may have been for Dave. I think Dave I always saw Dave as something I aspired to be like him socially.
Me too. Me too.
So yeah, right.
Absolutely.
It's hard.
Absolutely.
You'll never get there.
Bruce,
Bruce, how
many times have I stopped by your office in the last year and said, "Boy, I'd like to be like Dave"?
Many times.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Well, it's funny because in 6th grade, I never had as close a friend in my life until I met Jack in 5th grade. I never had a best friend really, and when we weren't allowed, and we didn't know about the separation thing till later. But in 6th grade, we got put as far as possible away from each other in that school, and I was crushed. I was so upset. I cried for days about that. Honestly, and 6th grade was horrible. I got beat up by the local bully. I was in class with him, and it was 6th grade was rough. 7th grade was a little better, and 8th grade was a little better too. But my heart was with my best friend. I mean, that was where I wanted to be. And, then we got to high school. And by that point, some of those dies that had been cast in 7th and 8th grade were a little stricter. We definitely stayed friends, but there was a drift that happened. Absolutely. Marching band took over a bigger part of my life than I think I would have expected it to. And
yeah, and you found people, and, I found different people. And, I think I was, spent a lot of those first, my freshman and sophomore year, just processing what I'd gone through in middle school. It was like, I know that sounds snowflake-ish and whatever, but it's, that was reality for me. So, yeah, so it was, having, and then again, I had to deal with this thing where okay, for so many years, I was the train kid. That was the thing that sort of defined everybody's view of me. So you get to high school, which is sort of a new beginning, and I was like, enough with the trains. Like just I'm going to let that go for a while and try to grow up or something.
Bruce, the crazy part.
There's numerous. Which ones do you want to focus on?
I was going to focus on the bully that beat Dave up in grade 6. You know who that? The crazy part is that was Rich Winisky.
Ah.
Well, we know his name, but I won't say it on the air.
Yeah, it's a fact.
What year are we talking about? What year was grade 6?
88, 89.
Yep. Yep.
Dave and I bonded over a lot of other stuff then too. We found some common taste in music.
Yeah.
Tom Petty, Def Leppard. There were a lot of things we discovered together there.
Yeah, and it was just after the Reagan years, and there was the Giants were doing well, and
yeah, that's true. And I'd never had this kind of kinship. There was a stretch, Jack. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a stretch of probably 10 or 12 weeks in 5th grade that we spent every weekend together at one house or the other.
Right.
For 2 nights. Like from the end of school Friday straight through Sunday night. Like it was a defining thing for my youth. And even in high school, after we drifted apart in the marching band and stuff, Jack joined the marching band halfway through high school, and we started to get back closer together. And of course, that was right when my mom was real sick, and so that was another whole level of
those were tough times.
Those were tough times. Yes.
On a serious note, I'm going to enjoy listening to this podcast when it comes time to. We're not even barely out of. We're not even out of high school.
Got out of high school.
I know, but tell us a little bit about that, would you? Because everybody's heard Dave talk about how difficult it was when his mother passed, and can you just give us, a little bit of like what that was like to watch from the outside? It must have been difficult for you as well.
Well, I think that was probably, and it's hard to say, and I'll tell you, I'd actually more prefer to actually be with Dave in the same room to say it, but that was probably. I think.
Time out. Let me help you here. I don't mean difficult for you as in the same as it was for Dave, but it must have been difficult for you to watch.
Well, it was, but it was also, a very difficult period in our friendship. I think that was probably when, one of the interesting, side effects of joining the band was, I found my own little sub clique in the band, and we basically had, that in terms of our social lives, we're probably about as separate then as they were at any period in our friendship. I think
I agree,
and that wasn't. It was just something that evolved naturally.
You were in the band as well?
Yeah, I joined with Dave's encouragement, and encouragement from everybody around me. My sister was in the band. There were so many people there.
How big was this band? Like, was it?
It was tiny compared to the other.
What do we have? 50 people maybe total?
Yeah, compared to the other high schools in North Jersey.
Were you trying to say something, Bruce?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
I thought I heard you. Okay.
But yeah, so the hard thing I think about, the thing I feel the worst about looking back is Dave and I were, I think, had just at that point socially we were far apart. We still did train things, but we were each going through our own, challenges and growth, and just stuff happens in that period in that time of your life. And so yeah, I think what really. I think it was actually Dave's mom's passing that sort of, kind of snapped me back to reality and woke me up. I realized that I had missed a lot of what Dave had been through. Obviously I knew what was going on, but I don't think I was there in every way I should have probably been through each step of that evolution, and that's something I think about. It's part of the story of our friendship.
Sure, exactly. It's part of the story. It's part of the foundation, part of how you got here today. So we get to the end of high school. I'm exhausted already.
Those were crazy times.
Tough tell me about it. I remember you guys. Holy moly! I remember turning to Bruce. I said, "Can you believe these two clowns?"
I need your time machine, Lionel. It's
Oh yeah, absolutely. So at the end of high school, where did you go from there, Jack?
Well, I went on to Rutgers.
Okay.
Dave went on to Syracuse.
Well, I didn't ask you about Dave. I asked you about you. See, this is going to say episode number such and such.
Oh,
Jack,
okay.
Jack
okay.
Trabachino.
You're going to like this.
We've heard about Dave.
I went to Rutgers as the pharmacy major.
Oh, okay.
I got into the pharmacy school at Rutgers, which was a big deal at the time. And I stuck it out in pharmacy school for, I think, to the middle of my third year. And at the time, a lot was going on with, with speculation about Conrail being bought or split up. And we did some great train stuff back then. We did some really cool stuff. We went and
so while you guys were in different universities, you were managing to do train stuff together. Like, give me
I took a trip up on Empire Service up to Syracuse to visit Dave. I don't know if it was the first or second semester of our freshman year. I remember that distinctly because I wrote a turbo liner and that thing was all over the place. Going west on the Chicago line. And I'm looking up the train and you just see the cars going up and down.
Oh yeah,
from the track work.
Were you guys rail fanning at that time? Then is that what you guys were doing?
Yeah, we connected. We rail fanned. I mean, I know Dave came down to Rutgers during spring break. We, did some rail fanning around New Jersey. When his spring break was different than ours. We took an unbelievable trip to Binghamton in probably that was the coldest I've ever been in my life.
96, man, the winter of 96.
Holy
that was incredible. God. Yep, 3 feet of snow and 10 below zero. At noon. So it's very, very much like Canada, actually. But it was for
hold on. I'm not accepting that, Bruce. It's Binghamton in the winter is very much like Canada, but you're 60 miles from Canada. So it's not like Canada. It's the same as. You're 60, 80 miles from Canada.
It makes it.
But remember, the glaciers are still retreating up here.
Oh, that's right. The glaciers were still retreating. That's right.
But all the rail fanning back then, it's certainly
it's like Canada. Come, give me
it's like Canada. That's not an untrue statement.
All right.
And you digress anyway. So, but I think that one of the things that Jack's dad liked trains enough, even with Conrail and with everything else, that he would acquiesce to our begging back in grade school and high school to drive us trackside. And Jack and I spent time with family friends in Pattenburg, New Jersey, overnight to watch trains on the Lehigh Line. And his grandmother, his dad's mom, had moved from Elizabeth out to Cranford, which is another town along the old CNJ. And that house was closer to the Lehigh Line, which in the 80s and 90s is where the freight trains ran. So Jack and I would take a week each summer with each family. And I would go down with Jack to his grandmother's house for a week. And then he'd come with me up to upstate New York for a week, or a weekend anyway. And we'd trade, our parents would dump us at the tracks with cousins or sisters or brothers or whatever, and we'd sit all day and watch the trains come by. So we've been rail fans just as long as we've been model railroaders. And that's been, Jack, I would say that's been a really indispensable part. Everything we've done on the model was done because we were trying to emulate what we saw in the prototype.
Exactly. We saw it and, right down to, approachlet signals.
Right.
There's a reason you went for that, and it's because we saw it.
Well, and I think that's important groundwork to lay here is that Jack has been a big influence in the OC, the Onondaga Cutoff, and a lot of what you guys built is because of what you guys did, the rail fanning you did, and the time you spent together trackside, and you tried to replicate that.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's one of the things. Not to speak for Dave, but I know from that I think that's one of the sort of the foundational underpinnings of the whole OC is the rail fan experience.
Yes.
You can go
down. Yep.
You can go sit at a spot, and if you would learn the OC the same way we learned the Lehigh line, or we learned the Chicago line, or you learn any other, or the River line, or any other line you go rail fan on. If you took somebody who had never been there before, but had an interest in trains and stuck them at that farmer's crossing, they'd listen to their scanner if they went there enough days, and they'd know that TV9 and TVLA come west at this time, and they'd know that how to read what those approach lit signals say. You would pick up all the cues, on trying to rail fan a location on Dave's layout that you would have had to pick up when we were out there with our scanners and watching signals. And those were the only two things you had. Those were your two sources of information.
Which one of the two of you was more prolific with the camera?
Dave. Dave got a camera before I did.
Okay.
Man, I had a horrible experience with that. I had a 35 millimeter Canon that I guess was my dad's, and it had a sticking shutter. And my parents looked into getting it repaired, because I started, to want to take pictures of all the trains I was going to see. And we went to get that thing repaired. And, the camera shop person was like, not really worth it, and we ended up buying something instead that was kind of like a point and shoot, more of a point and shoot type camera with kind of a built-in little zoom stick thing. It wasn't a 35 millimeter SLR. It was the kind of camera you take to a graduation or something. If you, and that actually it kind of snuffed out my early interest in photography, because I did not enjoy taking pictures with that camera, and which was kind of a tragedy, because Dave eventually got into 35 millimeter SLR. He got a Nikon FG. He got a couple of lenses, especially I remember when he got his telephoto lens. And those pictures, obviously they show, we still look at those slides, and yes, you can see whatever. There's some technical flaws, but the point is there's a picture. Whereas I have notepads. I was the data guy. I had notepads filled with consists and car counts and what type and the train symbol. And that's sort of my memory is, and I flip through those pads and I'll see, holy God, we saw this train with like 7 engines or something. And I only have, the only record I have of that, either visually or mentally, is what's on that notepad. And I can picture those engines. I can picture them all coupled together. I can picture what they must have looked like in Pattenberg on that day. But, Dave is the one who actually has a photograph.
Is there any chance that Dave might share his photos with you?
Occasionally, yeah.
If you ask him nice enough.
No, here's the way I'm thinking. This is an article for these two guys to get together for a magazine where here's what we did when we were rail fanning growing up, and let's look at what we're doing on the OC.
Wow.
The same type of thing.
That is a great idea, as a matter of fact. That is a great idea. Rail fanning to model railroading, the transition, the connection between the rail fanning and the railroad, the Onondaga, and I love that idea. That's a great idea for an article. You guys,
that would be a lot of fun, actually. Yep. And I've got, by the time I have slides, I started shooting slides. I think it was my 16th birthday that my parents got me the SLR. Yeah, it would have been their 16th birthday. And we bought it at Dover Camera back when Dover Camera existed in Dover, New Jersey. And the first shot I ever took was of a NJ Transit Alp 44, years before I realized that would end up working for them, which is sort of ironic. I still have that slide too, and it came out pretty well. But as time went on, we both went to college, and I brought my camera to Syracuse, and so Jack would take notes of these trains, and I would take pictures. And we've got a bunch of slides from being together on those trips in 96 and 97, and different on the Chicago line and the Lehigh line down in Clark, Jack's grandmother's house and stuff. So that's true. And how that, the genesis of that, the seeds of the Onondaga cutoff came from a lot of those experiences, without a doubt. But I'll never forget that 96 trip with Mark, man. That was snowy and cold. Holy moly.
Yeah. So, eventually when 90, I guess, what was it? I don't know, when the merger was first proposed, I think we were freshmen in college.
Yeah, in 96. It was proposed in 96.
And I remember, emailing back and forth because, both railroads had to submit some kind of operating plan to the, FRA or the ICC or something. And we were, it looked like they were going to be both railroads were going to be running tons of trains everywhere.
Okay. Let's be a little more specific. Both railroads, the merger.
NS and CSX. Before they split up Conrail, there was a lot of information going around about, NS was going to commit to running a certain number of trains on the southern tier between Buffalo and Binghamton, or between Buffalo and North Jersey.
Now, while this was all going on and you guys were getting excited about the merger and bust up of Conrail, were there other guys that you were talking to? Were there other guys hanging out with you guys while you were doing the track? Or did you occasionally had you found other guys to enjoy the rail fanning with and railroading with, or was it still just the two of you?
Well, I think Dave did up in Syracuse. I know he found Ian Clark and Doug Wonders.
Yep.
Dave always finds friends.
Yeah. Lehigh Line was yeah, exactly.
So pretty much what we're picturing now is Dave is with his pals and you're standing trackside with a notebook because you didn't have a decent camera.
Well, by the time we got into the point where we knew Conrail was going to, where it was evident that Conrail wasn't going to last.
Yeah.
Then I went out and got a camera.
Okay. Well, and that was after those two Amtrak trips too. Like we had taken those two big Amtrak trips over the summers before Conrail split up. Right.
Run that one by us again, Dave. We were all talking at the same time.
Well, I mean, after freshman year of college, Jack, was our first Amtrak trip together. It was my grandmother had left me money to travel with, and at the time Amtrak was running a sale. And at home, Mom was kind of sick. My brother and sister were still in high school; they were doing their own thing. In 93, 94, and then 95, my mom passed away a couple months before I went to college. So after a year, my dad was holding the fort down with my sister, who was also sick with something totally different, and my brother, who was 2 years younger. And so they were doing high school stuff while I was in college. And as time went on, I saw this promotion for Amtrak. I'm not sure if it was me or you, Jack, that saw the promotion for the USA Travel Pass or USA Rail Pass or whatever that was.
Yeah.
But for I don't know, what was the price? Like $300 or something like that?
Yeah, it was cheap. It was, go as far as you want, 3 stopovers, you travel in coach.
As long as you do it within 60 days.
Yeah.
And so Jack and I, for $300 each, with like a suitcase full of crap food and a suitcase full of camera stuff and clothes, got out. My brother drove us to Newark Penn Station, ironically, which is one of my most important stations now for work. And we got on an Amtrak train in Newark Penn Station to go explore the country via Amtrak. And we spent a couple days in Chicago and a couple days in Flagstaff, Arizona, and went to Los Angeles and San Francisco and spent time in San Francisco with my uncle, and then back to Glenwood Springs, Colorado. This is all 96, right, Jack?
Yeah, I think that was 96.
Bruce, can you call the engineering department for me?
Yes.
Could you? I'm seeing somehow my microphone's not working.
Is it not working? Okay, let's let me dial them up there.
Could you please?
They say knock on it 2 times.
Yeah, ask for Larry, will you? Because he seems always.
Oh, not Larry. Larry.
We've had keep asking for Larry. That's what happened.
Yeah, Larry's not good. You want Jim? So I'll get Jim on it.
Okay, thanks.
Intermittent failures.
Yeah. There was something I was going to say there. I was trying to get a word in, and I couldn't get in, and now I can't remember what it was.
You want to know where they went on the Amtrak trip?
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah.
And they started telling you.
There was something else they said that clicked on them, and it was going to be a really good question, too, but the two of them were... It's like being in front of an avalanche or something, and you're just trying to save yourself and get out of the way. Okay. So, all right. So you've done a couple of cool, which sounds really cool, the Amtrak trips. So you...
hold on. They did one trip. What was the other trip?
Oh, yeah. What was the other trip?
Oh, we went back and did it again.
Okay.
We had such a good time in Flagstaff. We went back there and stayed there for a week.
Oh, really? In Flagstaff, Arizona? Why? What was so great about Flagstaff?
Well, Santa Fe and especially had a lot of, late second generation power, SD45s and C37s, and, stuff you didn't see anywhere else. And, they had the cow units. They had super fleet. The Santa Fe had a fantastic variety of locomotives.
And this is all in the mid 90s.
Yeah, late 90s. And just it was a different place back then. Once you got off at the Amtrak station downtown, there was a access road that paralleled the tracks. One of these stone roads, just 2-tire tracks, but you could just follow that thing into the mountains for miles, and just be totally out there and isolated alone. And if you went up either of the hillsides, just unbelievable photo angles. So that was basically what we did. We went out there. I don't know if it was a full week. I think we borrowed somebody's car. There was someone out there, Dave knew, we borrowed their car. It was really kind of classic low budget travel.
Yep.
But just being out there in the middle of the day above the tracks, and you just go out there and wait. And every afternoon a rainstorm would come in, and it was just the variety of stuff we saw was amazing.
I remember what it was I was going to say now. When Dave was saying you left from Newark, for those of you who don't live in the immediate New York metropolitan New Jersey area, when he says Newark, he's saying Newark, New Jersey is what he's referring.
No, it's Newark. It's pronounced Nork. Newark.
Well, whatever it is for you, it's Newark, New Jersey.
Thank you, Lionel.
Okay, so Jack, you went to Rutgers and you ended up as a pharmacist.
I did not, actually. I had a fantastic grade point average through 2.5 years of pharmacy school.
Is it a 4.0, guys?
But at that point, my interest in trains just was in railroads and in railroad history, and the economics, especially, of what had happened to the railroad industry. So I had a pretty intense interest in that, and it was one of those types of interests that just you produce with it. It's almost not unlike Dave with the cutoff. It's a driving interest in the history and how the policy, government policy especially, shaped the outcomes and the world we live in today. My high school studies were focused on the physical sciences, chemistry, calculus. That was the currency of success, I guess. There wasn't a lot of chances for me to explore this interest in history and economics, and especially as it related to railroads and public policy. So, I think when I graduated high school, it was logical to pursue this sort of physical science interest. But as I got into college, they have their humanities requirements.
Time out. Time out.
Yeah.
Bruce, did you just hear me there say, right, like as if I have any clue what's going on.
Oh, you don't know what any of this means?
Here's my synopsis. Dave was a bad influence on him, got him hooked on trains.
Yeah, that's pretty much.
No, Jack was the one that got me rehooked.
Something got me hooked on trains.
Don't forget, Dave's still in the basement shoveling coal. So, all right. So you didn't leave university as a pharmacist?
No, I did not. No, I quit pharmacy in the middle of my third year and switched to a field of study known as urban studies, which is, I basically completed the requirements for that in the remaining year and a half, which then went on to, graduate school for urban studies. And that is where, how I got connected with the people who actually eventually brought me into NJ Transit.
Wait a minute, time out. You work for NJ Transit too?
I do.
Holy mackerel. Did you know any of this, Bruce?
I'd heard rumor to the effect.
Oh, okay. That's a big
incestuous deal they got going on there.
What's that?
It's a big incestuous deal they got going on.
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting, that's a very interesting plot twist.
Okay, yeah, you want to know the best part of it is the person who actually selected me for my first internship at New Jersey Transit was my marching band drumline director in college.
Well, of course it was.
So it had nothing to do with anything that happened, academically or otherwise.
So you were in marching band in college as well?
Yes, I after joining the marching band in high school, I continued with it in college, and my freshman year of college, my one of the drumline coaches, I can't give his name, but we talked about trains. We discovered we had an mutual interest in trains, and much later on, 4 years later. Very much to his credit and my thanks, he remembered my name when my resume came across his desk.
Wait a
And
minute. Wait a minute. Your drumline major, you said? Who was the? You couldn't give his name, but who was he connected? How was he connected with the band?
he had gone to Rutgers himself
Oh,
and
okay.
was a drummer at Rutgers. And when he also worked at New Jersey Transit, and when he in his off hours during the fall football season, he was a drumline instructor for the marching band.
What's a drumline instructor? And by the way, I'm already know who this is. It's Bruce Springsteen, but that's
He's the only New Jersey musician anybody knows.
yeah. What's a drumline?
Awesome.
He would write the music arrangements for the songs we would play on the field at halftime.
Okay.
We basically lead the rehearsals for the group of drummers that played in the marching band.
So while he was working at New Jersey Transit, he did this in his spare time.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right.
Exactly.
And you found out he was. Did you say he was interested in trains, or he just worked for New Jersey Transit?
No, he had an interest in trains as well.
Okay.
Still does. Still a modeler.
Right.
This is Lou, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Lou Milan actually had an article in Model Railroad.
There you go. There's his name.
Wait a minute. Here, one guy's like we can't tell his name, and the other guy's spitting it out like he's roofing.
Well, I was trying to be discreet. Whatever.
Oh, discretion. That's my middle name.
Yeah. He didn't happen to sell decoders to a guy in Appleton, Wisconsin named Kevin Marks, did he? Because
I don't think so.
That's another long story.
He did a nice job on a Penn Central E8 article for Model Railroader, though.
Did he really? Lou
There
Milan?
you go.
All right. Okay, so all right, Dave. What were you going to say about Lou?
No, he's a gentleman. He's a good guy, and he wrote an article. It was in Model Railroader. I think it was the month after my cover article in Model Railroader. So probably maybe October 2019, if I had to guess. It was within the last 2 years. And it's a really, when Model Railroader used to write those articles about doing a beautiful kit bash of a plain Jane locomotive that was like a good model of a common prototype. You know what I mean? Like a basic look, nothing special, but something you'd see every day. And Lou is actually a gifted modeler. He did a beautiful job, basically modeling one of the ratty Penn Central E8s right at the end of Penn Central, right before NJ Transit would have taken over. And it's the engines that he remembered growing up. And he's an introspective guy, very thoughtful, gifted percussionist, very gifted percussionist. And
actually with tonal percussion, xylophone and marimba, and he could spontaneously play weight music. If you needed weight music for this program, he could just record. He could spontaneously play it.
Yeah, he's a gifted musician. Yes.
Weight music, like as in pounds?
Like elevator music.
As in elevator music or hold music. If you need hold music.
Hold music.
But like really entertaining hold music. Like,
yeah. Uh-oh. Everybody's chuckling now. That's good. Beer break.
Yeah, this is... I don't know. The story of my college life was just all these strange connections, between people, just very fortuitous connections, and all of them somehow interconnecting with one another.
Sure. So okay, so you do urban studies, and you graduate university, and then you apply for a job at New Jersey Transit. Is that your first job, or?
Yeah. Actually, I applied for an internship after I finished my undergraduate. I had, gone summers and winter breaks, making up time, and then, graduated in '99 and sent my resume to New Jersey Transit on advice of a contact. And my resume came across Lou's desk, and Lou picked it out, and I ended up interning in his department while I went to grad school. And then at the end of that year, I actually got a full-time job at Transit in his department. And I had met some other people. I can't go through all the important people in my life here. I don't think you'll be here till 2 a.m. or something. But
that's happened before.
Yeah.
Yeah. You'll be here till 2 a.m.
No, we're only going to be here for another no more than 37 minutes because by then we'll have done 2 hours, and that's the max.
Run out of memory. So
no, we just run out of. That's the max. That's as long as I'm going to let you talk.
For that long.
Yeah.
But that that was how I got my start at New Jersey Transit, and once I was in there, I mean, Dave interned there. We were both interns there at the same time.
We walked in on the same day together for the first day after the second Amtrak trip.
So wait a minute. You walked into New Jersey Transit to start internships
together
on the same day.
That's correct.
After the second Amtrak trip.
Correct.
Wow.
So my entire career at Transit, I literally walked in the front door for the first time in my life with Jack next to me for his first time in his life. We walked in and we looked up in the lobby. It was like, whoa, we're in the railroad headquarters. What do we do now? Jack's like, I think we take the elevator. I'm like,
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that was where we went through and got our chance to make, contacts with people who were, really role models for us for the whole, basically first half of our careers.
I agree.
Everyone were, the roles we're in now are, were taught to us by the people we went and visited, in the first couple of weeks of being on the job there.
And let's go through those people alphabetically. No, we're not doing that. So what department? So did either of you guys have any other jobs other than have either of you guys had any other full-time jobs other than working for New Jersey Transit?
Thank God we have not.
Correct.
And that's an interesting thing. We're sort of the last of I don't know the end of an era of career employees,
of lifers. We're lifers. Yeah. Jack and I are lifers at NJ Transit. Yes,
but it's not structured to assume that you're going to be a career employee anymore.
No, it was. It's not anymore.
That's another whole story altogether. So, Jack, do you think you would, if you make it to like your retirement, whatever your number is? I mean, Dave explained that once. Whatever your number is to retire at, do you think you'll make it to? You'll be a 40-year guy just because 40 is a cool number?
It could happen.
Okay.
Basically, by the time I have, it depends what numbers you're aiming at, but yeah, I mean, I could easily end up with
like say you could retire at 38 and a half years, and you know that if you stick it out for another year and a half, you'd be a 40-year guy. Would you do that?
Possibly.
Okay. So
we'll have to see how things look at the time.
All right. Okay, but the possibility's there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
have you ever listened to this podcast? Ever?
I think me once. Yes.
Which one was that? It must have been one of Dave's, I'm assuming.
To remember. It must have been one of Dave's, or it must have been the one with Rich.
Yeah. Man, if I ever get a hold of Rich, I'm just going to beat him to a pulp.
Yeah, he's I'm telling you, he's a very interesting character, and he knows a lot of very interesting characters.
Yeah, well, he's just kind of like he both you guys are here because of Rich. So
that's a big old Conrail Roger right there. So.
Yeah. Okay, so what department did you go? So Dave goes into bridges, and what department did you go into bridges and?
Well, yeah, my internship, again, we took whatever internships we could get just to get a toe in the door. My internship was actually with bus service planning, and it was actually service planning and development at the time. And I did a bus project at the Port Authority in New York, counting buses. But because of the people I met, like Jack talked about, when you're an intern, you get to talk to everybody you want to talk to. And I met the guys in rail service planning who knew that somebody in the bridges and buildings group, the structures group downstairs that does bridge inspection and repair, they had an opening in the field. And so I landed with the structures department doing project engineering, bridge inspection at a field office. My first day on the full-time payroll was September 1st, 99. But it was July 99 that we walked into that front door together at the headquarters office in Newark.
So you walked in July 99 and your first paid day was September of 99?
I think it was $10 an hour for the internship. So it was paid, but it was part-time. It was an internship. And I was able to work myself into a full-time job offer by September. Yes.
Yeah, Dave got a full-time job in 3 months.
Wow. So when you walked in, Jack, and the two of you, were you guys wearing any kind of were you wearing like capes or anything? Like super trained guys, or you just were dressed regular?
No, I mean, that was, again, Jack's right. We're the last era where you had to be scared about that when we applied for the job.
I had C&J ties in both colors. I had the tangerine and blue, and I had a green and yellow.
And that was the extent of letting anybody you knew that you liked trains one iota. We both entered transit, and at least I was well aware that I should not let people know that I love trains. It was years before I told anybody about it.
Right. Yeah. So did you guys have a secret handshake or something after you parted ways? So, okay. So where did you go, Jack? What was your internship career, and what job did you get hired? What department did you get hired into?
Well, because my background was in planning, I actually got hired in the Geographic Information Systems department, which is that's like a computerized mapping program, which has a lot of applications. I'm not sure how to describe it. It's
well, that's a coincidence because I'm not exactly sure how to describe you. But anyways, I digress.
It's the kind of thing that you're doing. You're doing things in the background on the back end that nobody sees, but that are very important.
Did that sound rude, Dave? Did that sound rude?
No, it's typical. It's okay.
Okay.
He knew what he was getting into. I told him all about you.
All right. Yeah, it was kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing, and it didn't come out right. I was,
It's all right.
Yeah.
It's all right.
All right.
No, I mean, basically, what Jack's group, when he hired out, we called it the GIS group. They did the system maps. They did the planning maps. They did ridership studies and density maps, traffic density. They would look at different counties and the areas that were underserved versus overserved, and they would put together, signage plans for how you wanted to roll out different projections for ridership. Future planning projects.
It's one of those jobs where you stand outside the building and you look at the building going up into the sky, and you wonder to yourself, like, what the hell is going on in there? And my job was one of those what the hell is going on in their jobs.
Well,
that the public just doesn't see.
Right.
It's an internal function. Where we had specialized technology that helped us answer questions that were asked by people inside the agency to figure out what they should say externally. So, that it's one of those, what's the one, Office Space with the guy with the stapler in the basement,
Yeah.
That's probably belittling it a little too much, but
yeah,
it's one of those functions the public just does not see or understand.
So we want everybody to know right now, your job is you're in charge of scheduling the trains for NJ Transit, right? Just briefly, is that a yes or a no? Is that basic?
Yes. So after a few years,
I'm talking.
Oh, sorry. Oh,
Listen to your lawyer. Don't give gratuitous information.
I thought this show was about me.
No.
Wow.
If anybody wants to write in, our email address is.
Yeah. It is about you, Jack. But usually, have you ever watched like Larry King or Mike Wallace on 60 Minutes?
I know you got to give the host some.
No, there's questions. Like I ask a question, then you answer it. And that kind of thing. So I want to get to another, you're going to have to be on again, Jack, to finish the story, because I would imagine your job as the guy that does the scheduling for NJ Transit is incredibly interesting, but at the speed we're going, we're looking at the 5th or 6th hour, and we're going to stop soon. And did Jim not fix my microphone?
I thought he did.
Yeah.
Well, you paused. We have to fill the space up.
It was like a nanosecond.
This is Jersey, buddy. This is how it works.
I'm really enjoying this.
We're glad somebody is.
Yeah. You know, when you're in Binghamton, Bruce, in the winter, it's just like Canada.
Just like Canada?
Yeah.
They got the polar bears are down there chasing the seals and all that
Yeah,
stuff?
exactly.
Hey, I was the one that said that. I'll take credit where credit is due.
I never said you didn't say it. So I was just holy mackerel.
See, you can cut that whole section out. It'll be a little bit shorter. So
There'll be no cutting.
There's no cutting. There's no cutting here. I want to get on to, okay, we're going to have you on again, Jack, to discuss all of that, doing operations for New Jersey Transit and scheduling, because I know thousands of people will be interested in it. However, I want to, early on when you guys were first talking, and because I've had limited experience now operating the Onondaga Cutoff, I wanted to talk about how both of you guys are embedded in railroading, full-size, one-to-one railroading, and yet you've managed to make the experience, the Onondaga Cutoff, and Rich is the same way. Rich would fit into this. The three of you are very easy to talk to, very easy to enjoy, and yet the depth of knowledge that you guys have about railroading is extensive. So I would like to talk about, how do you manage to cross that divide between being guys that do it full time and being people that just want others to have fun doing it with you? That was a long question, but I think I understand what I was trying to say. Like, it was very easy to operate the Onondaga Cutoff remotely. Like we were going along there, and I was looking at a dispatcher's board, and I was a little confused by it, but I couldn't understand whether I was going east or west. And then you pointed out the paperwork, the schedule that you had drawn up, Jack, because that's your job on the Onondaga Cutoff. And that was, once I looked at it and stopped and focused in on it, I got like 18 emails before the opera, and I'm thinking, oh my God. But you guys seem to have a real sense of just enjoying the hobby. Like, you've somehow managed to make it prototypical and enjoyable at the same time, which I think is a real knack in this hobby that's hard for a lot of people to achieve. That sounded like it made sense.
I think it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and it's a good question. It's a good discussion. One of the things that Jack is able to do is apply the knowledge. So, to go from the GIS to the rail operation, it took a year or two, but Jack applied for a job internally and eventually was able to get on the railroad in the rail service planning department and do some of the future planning, some of the future plans for extra tunnels into New York when we were talking about the Gateway project. And that experience translated to scheduling trains on existing track. And so as people retired, Jack was promoted because he deserved every bit of it, and is now in charge of the department that does all the scheduling for crews, equipment, and for the train schedules. So he coordinates with a bunch of people that all work together to make that happen. And the best part about it is that My Model Railroad has been a huge beneficiary of his knowledge, and I would argue brilliance in that subject. I mean, Jack sees it through a lens that I'm not able to see, and that's why this works.
Yeah, I think the answer to that question is we sort of approach both things the same way, which is you have an available amount of infrastructure, you have sort of a set of operating standards you have to maintain, and how do you fit as many? It's like Tetris. It's a game of Tetris with trains
and with the time element, right?
Yeah. So the interesting part about the future planning that I did when I first started in the rail service planning department was like, okay, we haven't quite filled the railroad up yet. Here's a bunch of assumptions about future capacity. Like the closest you can run two trains together now is 8 minutes. Assume in the future you can run them 5 minutes. Fit as much stuff as you can on on that track with trains running 5 minutes apart. And the Onondaga cutoff is kind of like the same thing. You have those 5 staging tracks, you have this number of trains, you have this number of movements you want to make. What's the optimal arrangement of space and time to get all this stuff to all fit into the physical space and the physical infrastructure that you have available. So they're really, the two things are the same basic question, fundamentally. So that's the connection, I think, between the work I do in real life and the work I do on the cutoff. Is it's the same. You're applying the same intellectual tools and solutions, and just thinking about things the same way you would, as if it were, a problem you were trying to solve on an actual railroad.
Yeah, I think that's really, really important for people to understand here. Is any articles they read about the Onondaga cutoff, and any knowledge they start to get about it, is that the guy that's planning the schedule for the Onondaga cutoff is the guy that's in charge of the scheduling for the New Jersey transit system.
Yeah, and you have to be careful with that because, a lot of people hate New Jersey Transit.
That's true.
A lot of people don't think we're doing a great job.
Well, I doubt there's many of our listeners that really could care less because they're more interested in the fact that you enjoy the hobby.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's real, because I think it's very important. I think I'm a perfect foil for this, is because I had a lot of fun doing it. I had a lot of fun operating the railroad, and I was I have no problem. I mean,
go ahead, say it. Yes,
I'm gonna say it. Just relax. I'm gonna say it.
Out with it.
I was convinced that I wasn't going to have any fun because you guys were going to be so wound up about getting this railroad done the right way, and you run it right. And yet I had the total opposite experience. It's like because you guys are real railroad or full-time railroaders. What's the best? Full-time railroaders. It's like because you guys are full-time railroaders, you understand what it's like, how to make sure you have fun on a model railroad. Whereas the reverse is in effect, fellas that aren't full-time railroaders make it too intense. It wasn't intense. And go ahead.
I'm sorry to.
I'm used to
interject there. You said something that made me think of something, and that is that one of the things you have to do is you have to design something. This is true with real trains, and this is something I learned over the course of doing the Onondaga cutoff. Is you have to design something that other people can understand and work. So you may have a vision. You may come up with something that works. You can't put anything out there in the real world that can only work one way, and that's something I've learned the hard way. Not only over the course of my career at transit, because I've made those mistakes, but over the course of my the evolution of the Onondaga cutoff, is you have to put something out there that doesn't have a single point of failure. So if someone else is operating it and takes a different approach than maybe you would have taken, your operation will survive and live to make it to the next day, without delay. That's a very easy trap to fall into when you're planning an operation, especially when you're the one with the vision. And this is something I did with the cutoff, in staging and with the car rotation and the yard operation, is fill it to the point where there was only one way to do it. And when everything went right and you did it that one way, it worked. And for most operating sessions, if I personally was the yard master and I made sure it happened the way precisely as I designed it, yes, that session would work. But as soon as you put somebody else over there and, they make a couple of decisions out of sequence and the whole thing falls apart, there was a lot of redesign. There were several phases of redesign of the operating plan for the cutoff to, allow different types of decision making and different approaches to problem solving, either in the yard or with dispatching, so that you could put someone else in the chair. And if they made a choice or adopted a strategy that was a little bit different than maybe what the person who designed the operation was thinking, the operation would still function. And that's how real railroads work. You have too many people out there, and different people covering different shifts and personalities and different ways to approach problem solving and different things that can go wrong, to put something out there that can only work one way. So I think that's kind of become a guiding principle with the cutoff is, don't go so intense that you have to be over somebody's shoulder saying, look, if you don't move this gondola to that track at 10:40 p.m., this whole thing's going to blow up. You have to make it so that people can make mistakes, and that that they can have a learning curve, and that they can have a completely different approach, and that the whole session or the whole will still hang together. That's a common thread to real railroads. That's why real railroads function as well as they do, is because there's more than one way to fix the operational or service challenges that you face.
Okay, let me ask a question, because I know, or my understanding is that the operations on the OC are based upon a prototype schedule.
Mm-hmm.
How much of a challenge was it for you to take Dave's physical plant he has in his basement and adapt that prototype schedule to it to make it look like it was just flowing seamlessly?
Well, we made some, I made some, in designing that schedule, a bunch of selective compromises, and there's some interesting counterfactuals. They give you some latitude. I guess one of the things I thought was, the role of DeWitt, and the idea that, DeWitt Yard, and what it really is it's sort of the Harrisburg of, it gets into how the railroads actually function as sort of it's like a midway relay point. So what DeWitt really does on the real railroad is it gathers up all the traffic from all of these, kind of disparately distributed terminals. So even in North Jersey, you've got North Bergen, you've got E-Rail, you've got Dockside, you've got South Kearney, and separate trains are coming out of each of these points. And basically they're taking traffic up to Syracuse, and then trains are coming out of Boston and Worcester and other points in Massachusetts on the Boston line. They're all hauling everything. And Syracuse is the point where all that traffic is sort of gathered and reblocked and then distributed out to Chicago. So Conrail kind of redefined DeWitt to serve that purpose. And Dave's layout, the Onondaga Cutoff, the whole point of the Onondaga Cutoff is that it's a main line that runs around Syracuse. So it sort of subverts that idea of Syracuse being an intermodal gathering and reorganization point. So that's where your modeling latitude or your modeler's license comes into play. You can sort of say, well, would TV 207, either it's going to be a train that terminates there, it takes the route through downtown and terminates at DeWitt, or it's going to be a train that comes through at the scheduled time and just completely runs around and runs through. So each intermodal train, as I went through Conrail's prototype schedules, I sort of made a decision, well, am I going to run this train at the time it arrived, or am I going to run this train at the time it departed? And I was able to match up with Dave's infrastructure and how I was cycling those train sets. It works better for TV6 to run at 2 a.m. than it does for TV6 to run at 10 p.m. So we're going to say that Conrail's, in an Onondaga Cutoff alternate reality, that TV6 was a trail, a TOFC, basically a hotter train than it really was in the real railroad. On the real railroad, it took everything that came out of St. Louis. Like that train was a garbage truck. It was TOFC, double stack, single level container on flat car. It just ran from St. Louis to DeWitt and got chopped apart at DeWitt and left DeWitt as a different train. I hope, I know that's very long winded, but
no, that's the nail.
No, and I think you're thinking that's the type of answer I was hoping to get. That you looked at everything, figured out what you could model and how you could do it, and then you wrote the story for it.
Yes, yeah, you sort of have to retrofit a story. Just the same way Dave has a story about how this line, how and why this fictional route would have existed. There's a whole corresponding story for how this, what the existence of this fictional line, what the implications of that are for operations and schedules, and for intermodal especially. That's a really big deal. So again, that's where we put the modeler's license on it and say, I can look at a train that spent 5 hours into it, and I can, well, what's easier? What works for the Onondaga cutoff? Does it work to run it early, or does it work to run it late? And I can, you can backfill a story to what works for the specific operation of the cutoff.
Yeah, but I think the interesting part is that a guy that's in charge of scheduling for NJ Transit is this interested and gets this much enjoyment out of scheduling trains on the OC, the Onondaga Cutoff, and then you throw in a doofus like me, who really has no interest in paperwork or rules, and it's really easy to operate and works like the real thing. So I mean, I'm happy to follow rules if they make sense, and the whole thing just seemed to flow together. It was great fun. Like I said to Dave afterwards, I said, in all honesty, I really wasn't looking forward to going there in person for the first time. And then after that night of remote operations, I can hardly wait.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's something that's evolved too. Is there's roles to be filled for everybody, and even when we were having the operating sessions in person, each time there's a new person there. There's a person that's never been there before, or there's people that like to run mainline trains, or there's people that like to run trains that work the yard, or there's people who only want to switch. Dave has created an environment there where you have a legitimate operational role for each sort of operational personality type.
The only caveat I would throw into that, and I don't think Dave would disagree because he constantly talks about how he has people helping him, is obviously it's Dave's house, it's Dave's layout, it's in his, he owns it, but it seems more to me like Rich Winiski, Jack Trabachino, 4 syllables, I guess, and Dave Abeles what has made this work as well as it has. Am I pretty close to that, Dave? Or
that is a fact, and I can guarantee you that the only reason that this railroad has had the success that it has is because of Jack and Rich and me working together. Without that teamwork, there is no Onondaga Cutoff. I mean, I love modeling and I enjoy it. I love watching Conrail stuff or Rio Grande stuff. I love trains, and without Jack and the mind that he has to put the service plan in on a given set of infrastructure, and to push my limits with it, and to challenge me with it, and to force me to rethink things. And then without Rich's ability, one of Rich's things, he loves the paperwork side of railroading as much as you can't stand it, Lionel.
Right.
So Rich's job on the OC is to take what Jack plans and distill it down into something that can be handed to somebody with no questions asked. And
and he has his whole own set of problems that he's trying to solve.
Right.
Which is really interesting too.
Are you talking about the layout, or are you talking about in life?
Well, the layout.
Oh, okay. Because I
would say both. I would say, because that's model railroading, guys, right? I mean, we're not doing this because we have nothing else to do. We have a central passion for railroads, and for Jack and I, it's not just the trains on the tracks. It's the history, it's the camaraderie, it's the culture, it's the economics. It's why there would still be an Onondaga Cutoff if it was ever built. Like all of that passion goes into the planning for each and every session. And Jack's refinement of the schedule over years now, over a decade now, really, is because the schedule was erratic and the trains got too big, and we had inconsistencies, and all of those things that were not realistic have, each and every one of them has been addressed over time by Jack and by Rich translating it. And I maintain it. I maintain the infrastructure. I send out the emails. I make sure it gets some web time. I host the little online things, which would become a lot of fun. But none of that means one iota. It would not be an exceptional model railroad without Jack and without Rich. And Jack is the genesis of this. Jack came up with the track plan. I can't overstate how important he is to this. And it's a dream come true to be able to participate at this level with help of this quality and this depth. And the fact that we started it essentially in 1987 in 5th grade. I don't know. You can't make it up. It's a great story. It's a lot of fun.
Well, and I think that's obviously we're going to stop now because we've run out of time. The network will only allow us so much time, but we're obviously going to have to do this again because there's a lot to talk about. I mean, we got to talk about how you guys manage, how you guys design the track plan, and we got to talk about just building the OC, and we got to talk about Jack and his real life, his full time job at NJ Transit, and also Jack, we need to talk about that whole thing with Babby. I need to get your input on that whole situation.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I'd be happy to share that.
Yeah.
I absolutely, and I think, the one thing I love is that it translates universally. Any place you want to have this, you can have it.
Yeah, that's something else we need to. Yeah, that's something else we could. There's no reason you don't have to. That's an excellent point. I think that's the point I was trying to make earlier. Is I get the sense from you two guys, like as much as you're thrilled with your life's journey and the fact that you're both working for the railroad, the same railroad, and you get to enjoy all that. I get the sense from you guys is you'd be just as happy if there was some version of the Onondaga cutoff and how well it ran in every town down the road, and you don't guys need to credit for it. You just want people to have fun. That's what the sense I got is that you guys just want people to have fun.
Amen. And it could be 3-rail line. Hell, it could be tin plate standard gauge. It could be a G gauge garden railroad. It's not the scale or even the detail, I think, that carries the passion. I love that part of it. I can focus time on that stuff solely because Jack and Rich have embraced this operation as their own. And I don't know half the stuff they put together in the plan because it's not my responsibility. My responsibility is to set the vision and make sure that we have the right people in place. And Jack is not only the right person, he's the vice president of the railroad. I mean, he and Rich could run this railroad with me not even here. All I have to do is tell them how to turn it on. And that's a testament to their passion for it. And it's much better for their passion.
We need Dave to send the emails or no one's going to show up.
I have another question too. We're talking about in another episode of Dave and Jack's trip through life. We're gonna have to come up with a name for this. Because I kind of imagine the two of you skipping down the yellow brick road, from the age of 10 or 12.
It's
a fantastic story. You both end up at NJ Transit. It's a fantastic story.
Yeah, Dave and Jack's railroading adventure.
Dave and Jack's excellent railroading adventure.
There we go.
Yep, with a Tetris block connecting the two of our names.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, we'll see about that.
or the Erie like I want a lightning strike. You can use that too if you're particular.
Oh, thanks, thanks, Dave.
Yeah, I know you're a particular kind of guy, Lionel. It's okay.
Can I say something, Lionel?
Yeah.
Dave, he'll do whatever the hell he wants.
Yeah. Oddly enough, Dave, I don't feel as though I need your permission. But
I think that's legitimate.
Boy, you two guys are adding a ton to this hobby. But anyways, we're going to do another episode. This is don't anybody panic. There's lots of unanswered questions, so we're gonna continue, and we'll do this again. This will be another 37-part trilogy, The Life of Jack Trabachino. Trabachino. I guess the fourth syllable is the no. So the is a single syllable, man. It took me years to learn that. Bruce, could you give out our email address?
I would love to, because I want people to send their emails with questions of what they heard so we can try to answer some of them further down the line. So send us an email, modeler with one L, modeler'slife@gmail.com. That's the old-fashioned way. Lionel will tell you the easy way.
Yeah, if you there's a picture of Bruce, the moderately agitated mailboy, in a particularly agitated state on the website. Jack, have you ever been to our website?
I don't know that I have.
Yeah. Do you even care that this podcast exists?
I do.
Okay.
I do now.
Okay.
good.
That's good. Absolutely. Okay, so if you go to the website, there's a picture of Bruce, the moderately agitated mail boy in a particularly agitated state. And all you got to do is click on that picture, and you can automatically send an email. Just fill in the text.
And how would they get to the website?
They go to amodelerslife.com, and everything you need to know about the podcast is right there. You even can read a little biography about our very own Uncle Dave. Did you know that around the old AML network, he's known as Uncle Dave? Did you know that, Jack?
I think I heard him referred to as that earlier.
Okay. Yeah, I think you did. Yeah. I wanted to see if you were sleeping or not. What a great, we're going to have to delve into this because I still got to find out about that whole Babby thing and Dave's dad telling her at her grand.
Oh God! Well, the funny thing is I think the most interesting part of the Babby story for the listeners is going to be the operational side of that, the model railroading side of that, which we never really talked that much about. We touched on it, but
we took that thing apart and put it back together again.
Somebody else's
Babby years.
The Babby years. Yeah, exactly.
There were days I was up there alone on Saturday night. Like I'm 26 years old and I'm up there on a Saturday night by myself with track like all over the place.
Yeah, but the great thing about that story is how Dave's dad ended up dumping her at her granddaughter's graduation. I love that.
That was a little touch and go, but
that was not good.
That wasn't what it was all about,
No.
Well, it's one of the parts that it's all about for me. So,
yeah.
I mean, the whole thing. You guys do this whole thing with this fantastic layout that Dave's dad accidentally stumbles onto because he's dating this lovely woman, and then all of a sudden the thing just comes to a boom. Like it's like you ran into a 6-foot cement wall. It just stop. It's over. Move on. I love that. What else? I think we've covered it all.
We're pretty much there.
Yeah, I think so. I'm exhausted, Bruce. I'm telling you, buddy, I am exhausted.
Yes, sir.
Holy mackerel. What'd you think, Jack?
Well, that went fast.
It does. People, it's a fun thing to do. This podcast is a fun thing to do, and everybody always enjoys themselves because it's you're talking about stuff you like.
Yeah, and you're talking about yourself. There's nothing you like more than talking about yourself. You start talking about yourself, you can't stop.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, for you guys, anyways.
Yeah.
You guys are awesome. You guys are really friggin' awesome. You truly are. I was so lucky. I am so lucky to have started this podcast so that I could meet you guys. And literally to hear the sound of my own voice. And it's all because Bruce insisted I had to go on Tom Barbley's thing. So, all right. Hey, before we finish this thing, and if you want Jack, after this, I'm sure you're going to want an AML t-shirt, Modeler's Life t-shirt, eh?
Absolutely.
If you go to
it'd be nice if somewhere you could get that, wouldn't it?
Yeah, well, you know what? If you go
I have to go to the website?
Are you sure the guy fixed this microphone?
Apparently not.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's Jack's headphones not working right.
Did you?
Yeah, I think you're muted.
Did you know, Bruce, that the winters in Binghamton, New York, can sometimes, when it gets cold, it's just like Canada.
There's no pee.
I've heard rumor to that.
There's no pee, Lionel. No pee. No
it's
pee.
like Canada in May.
Yeah. You know what? Now that we're talking, I'm gonna open up the maps, and we're gonna just see. We'll open up maps. Google
where Binghamton is?
No, I know where Binghamton is. I want to just see how far is it. I'm gonna get directions from Binghamton, New York. Let's see, Binghamton, New York to Kingston, Ontario. There's a Binghamton, isn't it?
No, there's no pee.
There's no pee in it.
Okay.
Come on, Lionel.
Jeez.
Bingham. Okay, well, there's no, well, there's a second T in Toronto, so live with it. Okay, Binghamton, New York to Kingston, Ontario. Here we go. I'm guessing it's less than 100 miles, but it might be 120. 205 miles.
Oh boy. Now, what? Maybe you should start riding motorcycles so you can figure out some mileage.
Or if we do Buffalo, New York, it's only 198 miles. So it is not very far to the. If you go straight north, it's not very far.
No.
True. That's true. As the weather flies.
Yeah, as weather flies. All right. Anyways, that's it. Look how long we've been at this. 2 hours.
That's great.
Yeah, you don't have to do anything but listen to it. Now, Jack will never listen to it, but
My wife is going to listen to it.
Oh, is she?
That's what I was told.
What's your wife's name?
Denise.
Oh, hey, Denise. How are you doing? How many kids you got, Jack?
2.
And their names are?
Catherine and Christopher.
Way to go.
Yeah, we went for maximum syllables there.
And did you meet her on the train?
No, we met in marching band. We met right when we first got to college.
Okay, in marching band.
Yeah, it's a long story after that, but it all worked out in the end.
Okay, so at the appropriate time, Jack, you have to say happy rails to you.
Okay.
Okay, can you handle that? And that's all. That's all I want.
Is there a count off or?
That's all I want is happy rails to you.
Just listen carefully.
Yeah. So you have to focus. You have to have a laser focus. And at the appropriate time, you say happy rails to you. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Well, Jack, as we close the barn doors on another episode of A Modeler's Life, and the sun slowly sets over the back 40, I guess there's nothing else left to do except for you to say...
Happy rails to you. I know, I said it like a question. I think I need to redo that. I thought there were going to be other people with me.
Go ahead, you can say it.
I don't know.
Happy rails to
gosh.
you.
Oh, there you go.
Hey, Lionel,
Yeah?
this is why we can't have nice things.
Yeah, this is why we can't have nice things. Okay.
This is great.
All right, Jack, we're going to do it again. And try to be laser focused, okay?
And do not phrase the answer in the form of a question.
Yeah, this isn't Jeopardy.
And don't sing. No singing.
No singing.
No singing.
No singing. Don't phrase it in the form of a question. Just say happy rails to you. Well, Jack, as we close the barn doors on another episode of A Modeler's Life, and the sun slowly sets over the back 40, I guess there's nothing else left to do except for you to say...
Happy rails to you.
While in Busted Knuckle, guests of A Modeler's Life podcast stay at the Casa del Sol Motor Court and Inn, where late-night dancing at the Rumba Room is a magical event to be experienced.
It's another Lincoln Homer.